Hello and welcome to Biography Shorts. I am your narrator, Frank Avella. Here we will be covering the short biography of the powerful and inspiring Martin Luther King Jr. We will be covering several different topics, so let's begin with the introduction. Martin Luther King Jr. was the leading civil rights activist of the 1950s. In fact, I would go so far as to say he was perhaps the most influential civil rights activist of all time. Dr. King had made a great impact on improving race relations between whites and African Americans. King is well loved and respected by members of all groups. King was a Baptist minister preaching God's Word. He began preaching in front of a congregation of just a dozen people. His first sermon was at the pulpit of Ebenezer Church. King was instrumental in helping end segregation in the United States. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. He received that award for his solid commitment towards social justice and leading the civil rights movement. Next, we will take a look at his early life. Dr. King was born on January 15, 1929. He was born in Atlanta, Georgia. Martin Luther King Jr. was the middle of three children. Both his father and grandfather were Baptist ministers. Preaching was in his DNA. His father was also a figure in the civil rights movement. As a young kid, he attended public schools in Atlanta, Georgia. He wasn't allowed to go to the same school as white children. Back then, the schools were segregated, but not equal. King was disgusted at the treatment of his community. Early on, Martin Luther King questioned religion. He was skeptical of Christianity. He saw the emotions by people in the church as fake. The next topic up is his education. Martin Luther King Jr. earned a bachelor's degree in sociology from Morehouse University. King always did well in school. He was skipped grades in high school, and his mother was a teacher. As he entered Crozer Theological Seminary, he was elected student body president. This was just one example of the early signs of his ability to lead and inspire others to follow. Upon graduating there, he delivered the valedictorian speech. King naturally had the ability to captivate others with his words. He even got better at this as the years went on. King married Coretta Scott and begins to work on his PhD. Together they have 4 children. Coretta was expected to be a housewife. Martin earns his PhD in systematic theology at Boston University. The next section up is the Montgomery bus boycott. It all begins when Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat to a white person. Rosa Parks was arrested for this act and is one of the greatest heroes in African American community today. After this, King met with other African American leaders to organize a bus boycott. King was chosen to lead the boycott. African Americans responded to King's rhetoric and did not ride the bus, but instead walked to work. King himself was attacked during the 382-day bus boycott. Both the homes of Martin and his fellow leader E.D. Nixon were regularly attacked during this time. The African American community also took legal action and cited the case of Brown v. the Board of Education. The case was settled and it was a big win for the African American community. The next section up is the Greensboro sit-in. African American students from North Carolina planned a, quote, sit-in protest. Sit-in protests are still popular as a peaceful way to protest today. Black students refused to sit in colored labeled food sections. They remained seated, taking verbal abuse from white individuals, even having food thrown at them. Martin Luther King Jr. joined the protest with the students and was arrested for protesting at a local department store. He was released. Then King was arrested a second time for a probation violation. President JFK expressed concern and actually called his wife Coretta. Arrested another time for protesting, this time King gained national attention, and he sent out his famous letter from Birmingham jail where he preached nonviolence. The next section in the life of Martin Luther King is his assassination. By 1968, King was growing weary of his efforts. He felt as though he was not getting anywhere in terms of the civil rights movement. It was physically taking its toll on him. He had agreed to help with the Memphis labor strike. King met with sanitation workers to discuss economic equality and other issues. In King's last speech, he talked of the Promised Land and finishing things to the end, which was foreshadowing. Martin Luther King was killed on his hotel balcony by James Earl Ray. There are still many questions to this day as to the actual motive for the murder of King. After his death, riots and protests began across the country. This was national news and it affected towns and cities all over the country. It's one of history's darkest days. Now, on a more positive note, the fun facts section. Martin Luther King Jr. actually started college at 15 years old. All his life he was an excellent student, and even a valedictorian as mentioned earlier. He led the March on Washington where he gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. This speech took place in front of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963. And part of his speech goes as follows. "I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." So that's basically everything you need to know about Martin Luther King Jr. Be sure to check out the next biography short on Florence Nightingale, my favorite. Also, make sure to subscribe to this channel, click the bell on the subscribe icon to get notifications, please like and share this video, and for teachers, check the description links for resources as well.